It's been 46 years since Minder first took us into the fast-talking world of London's underground deals and unforgettable characters. But what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Let's find out where the cast are now, and you won't believe how much life has changed them. George Cole, as Arthur Daly. George Cole was born on April 22, 1925, in Tooting, South London. At 54 years old, he played Arthur Daly, the smooth-talking, quick-witted wheeler dealer at the center of Minder. The character didn't just carry the story, it gave the entire series its edge, making every deal feel like it could fall apart at any second. And while Arthur Daly always seemed in control, Cole's own life was far more uncertain. His first marriage to actress Eileen Moore ended in 1962 after years of quiet tension that never truly resolved, and those who knew him said he rarely spoke about it, as if the silence was easier than the truth. When he later married Penny Morell, he became fiercely protective of that relationship, holding on to it while continuing to work steadily in projects like The Bounder and Blot on the Landscape, determined not to lose stability a second time. As he aged, his health began to slip in a way that felt sudden and unforgiving. A bout of pneumonia quickly turned serious, leading to sepsis and overwhelming his body in a matter of days. Even as audiences continued to associate him with Minder and his later appearances in shows like Midsummer Murders, his final illness moved faster than anyone expected, leaving little chance to recover. George Cole passed away on August 5, 2015, at the age of 90. His funeral at Reading Crematorium was filled with quiet emotion, especially when the Minder theme played and Dennis Waterman delivered a heartfelt tribute. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, Cole left behind a legacy that felt deeply personal to viewers, because Arthur Daly never felt like just a character. He felt real. Dennis Waterman as Terry McCann. Dennis Waterman was born on February 24, 1948, in London, England. At 31 years old, he played Terry McCann, the tough but loyal ex-con who became Arthur Daly's right-hand man in Minder. His grounded, no-nonsense presence made the partnership believable, turning their dynamic into the heartbeat of the show. But off-screen, that sense of control often slipped away. He was a child star, growing up in front of cameras instead of classrooms. That early success pushed him straight into adult roles like The Sweeney, turning him into one of the most recognizable faces on British television. Yet behind that confidence was constant pressure, the need to stay relevant, to stay successful, and to never fall behind in an industry that forgets quickly. That pressure didn't stay in his career, it followed him home. His personal life became a series of emotional collisions. 4 marriages, Penny Dixon, Patricia Maynard, Rula Lenska, and Pam Flint, each telling a different chapter of a man who struggled to find stability. His marriage to Patricia Maynard gave him 2 daughters, including Hannah Waterman, but even that couldn't hold things together. Then came the most controversial relationship of all, with Rula Lenska. Accusations of violence, his own shocking comments years later, and a pattern that refused to stay hidden turned their marriage into one of the most talked-about scandals of its time. And still, he kept going. Even as criticism grew, over his behavior, over his insistence on singing his own theme songs, over legal trouble like repeated drink-driving offenses, Waterman never fully stepped away. He returned in new tricks, older, but still carrying that same unmistakable energy. Yet by then, something had shifted. He moved to Spain, away from the noise, away from the headlines, choosing a quieter life with Pam Flint. Dennis Waterman died on May 8, 2022, at the age of 74, after battling lung cancer at his home in La Manga, Spain. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his legacy isn't just about fame. It's about a career that burned bright, a life that never slowed down, and a character in Minder that still feels real long after the cameras stopped rolling. Glynn Edwards as Dave Harris. Glynn Edwards was born on February 2, 1931, in Penang, Malaysia. At 48 years old, he took on the role of Dave Harris, the warm, familiar barman of the Winchester Club in Minder, a character who quietly became the heart of the series. While others brought chaos, Dave brought stability, and that balance made Edwards unforgettable to audiences across Britain. But long before he stood behind that iconic bar, his life had already been shaped by loss. Losing his mother at a very young age and his father during his teenage years, Edwards grew up moving between relatives, never quite rooted in one place. That unstable childhood quietly built his resilience. He found an early escape in storytelling and theater, eventually training at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. From there, he worked his way through stage productions before landing film roles like Zulu, 1964, and later Get Carter, 1971, proving that even small roles could leave a lasting impression when played with authenticity. His personal life, however, carried its own emotional weight. His marriage to actress Eutha Joyce, which began with shared artistic passion, ended in divorce after more than a decade together. That period hit him harder than he ever publicly admitted. Those who knew him said he buried himself in work afterward, taking role after role, as if staying busy was the only way to move forward. Later, he found a more stable chapter with Christine Pilgrim and eventually Valerie Edwards, building a quieter, more grounded life away from the spotlight. Despite playing lively characters on screen, Edwards himself was known to be reserved, almost the opposite of the man audiences loved in Minder. He often felt overshadowed by the show's main stars, even though his character was essential to its success. Rather than chase bigger fame, he chose consistency, appearing in a wide range of television series like The Professionals and The Saint, steadily building a career defined by reliability rather than headlines. That quiet persistence became his signature. Glynn Edwards passed away on May 23, 2018, at the age of 87 at his home in Edinburgh, Scotland, after a gradual decline in health. He spent his final years living between Scotland and Spain, far from the intensity of the industry he once navigated. With an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million, his legacy remains tied to one simple image: a man behind a bar, listening more than speaking, and becoming, in his own understated way, one of the most enduring faces of Minder. Patrick Malahide as D.S. Albert Chisholm. Patrick Malahide was born on March 24, 1945, in Berkshire, England. At 33 years old, he appeared as D.S. Albert "Cheerful Charlie" Chisholm in Minder, a sharp and persistent detective whose presence constantly threatened Arthur Daly's schemes. His performance brought a quiet intensity that made him one of the most memorable antagonists in the series. His journey into acting didn't begin with certainty. Coming from a modest family of Irish immigrants, Malahide initially studied experimental psychology at the University of Edinburgh, unsure of his direction. It was only after joining the university's drama society that something shifted. He discovered a natural command of language and character, especially his ability to master different accents. From there, he worked tirelessly through theater, taking on everything from stage management to acting in classical productions, slowly earning his place through persistence rather than sudden success. When it came to his personal life, Malahide chose a different path from many actors of his time: privacy. His first marriage to Rosie Wright ended in divorce, a quiet chapter he never publicly dissected. Later, he married photographer Joe Ryan, and together they built a life deliberately kept away from media attention. That decision wasn't accidental. After years in an industry that constantly watches and judges, he made a conscious effort to protect what mattered most, even if it meant staying out of the spotlight beyond his roles. Professionally, he faced a different kind of challenge: being typecast. His sharp features and commanding voice often led him to play authority figures or villains, roles that could easily become repetitive. Yet instead of resisting it, he refined it. Performances in The Singing Detective and later as Balon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones showed how he could turn similar character types into something layered and compelling. Even in films like The World Is Not Enough or Captain Corelli's Mandolin, he brought a subtle depth that elevated supporting roles into something memorable. As of 2026, Patrick Malahide is 81 years old and remains active in film and television, continuing to take on roles that suit his experience and presence. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, his career stands as a testament to endurance. Never the loudest name in the room, but often the one that quietly commands attention long after the scene ends. Gary Webster as Ray Daly. Gary Webster was born on February 3, 1964 in Whitechapel, East London. At 27 years old, he played Ray Daly, the younger, sharper replacement who stepped into Minder in 1991 after Dennis Waterman's departure. His arrival changed the tone of the show, bringing a more unpredictable and modern edge that divided fans overnight. Growing up in East London, Webster didn't have a smooth path into acting. He pushed his way into the industry early, landing a role in EastEnders that gave him his first real recognition. But success came with pressure just as quickly. Being cast in Minder felt like a breakthrough, yet it also placed him directly under scrutiny, as audiences compared him relentlessly to the actor he replaced. That constant comparison followed him, turning what should have been a career-defining moment into a daily test of confidence. At home, stability was just as fragile. His marriage to Wendy Turner faced intense strain during the early 2000s when financial problems spiraled out of control. Debts mounted, and at one point, they were close to losing everything, including their home. Webster later spoke openly about this period, describing how the stress forced him to take on any work available, including roles in Family Affairs and The Bill, just to keep his family afloat. The pressure eventually caught up with him physically. In 2011, Webster suffered a serious heart attack, a moment that forced him to confront how far things had gone. He underwent heart surgery, and recovery became a slow, uncertain process. It wasn't just a health scare. It was a turning point that changed how he approached both work and life. As of 2026, Gary Webster is 62 years old and continues to work across television and stage, carefully rebuilding his career while maintaining a quieter life. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his journey stands as a reminder that survival in the industry isn't just about talent. It's about enduring the moments when everything seems to fall apart. Peter Childs as D.S. Ronnie Rycott. Peter Childs was born on August 31, 1939 in Eastbourne, England. At 40 years old, he played D.S. Ronnie Rycott, the relentless, sharp-tempered detective obsessed with bringing Arthur Daly down in Minder. His performance brought real tension to the series, making every appearance feel like trouble was closing in. His early years in acting were defined by persistence rather than instant success. Childs spent nearly a decade working in repertory theater, taking on small roles and learning the craft the hard way before television finally opened its doors. Appearances in shows like The Sweeney and Public Eye slowly built his reputation, and by the time Minder arrived, he had developed a style that made even minor characters feel dangerous and memorable. Then came the shock that changed everything. Childs was diagnosed with leukemia, a form of blood cancer that struck while his career was gaining momentum. Even as he continued working, including appearances connected to Minder, the illness advanced rapidly. Peter Childs died on November 1, 1989, at the age of 50 in London. His passing felt especially tragic because it came just as audiences were beginning to fully recognize his talent. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000 at the time, he left behind a legacy shaped by determination, proving that even a late rise can leave a lasting impact when it ends too soon. Michael Povey as D.C. Jones. Michael Povey was born on November 27, 1950, in Nant Gwynant, Wales. At 35 years old, he played D.C. Jones, a steady, observant police officer in Minder. His presence added a grounded realism, making the world around Arthur Daly feel more believable and controlled. He didn't rise through fame overnight, and that's what made his journey different. Povey chose to build his career in Wales, staying close to his roots instead of chasing the London spotlight. That decision shaped his identity as an actor, especially through long-running Welsh productions like Pobl y Cwm. At the same time, he quietly expanded his range with projects like A Mind to Kill, showing a depth that often went unnoticed outside his home country. That steady path came with a quiet trade-off. While others gained wider recognition, Povey remained largely tied to regional work, and there was always a sense that his talent deserved a bigger stage. Still, he never stepped away from what mattered to him, continuing to work consistently, writing, and contributing to Welsh-language productions even as the industry around him changed. It wasn't the loudest career, but it was one built on purpose and consistency. In his later years, Povey faced cancer, a battle that slowly took its toll. Even then, he remained connected to his work, appearing in projects like By W. Selwood as long as he could, refusing to completely step away. The illness progressed quietly, but those close to him knew how much strength it took to keep going. Michael Povey died on December 5, 2017, at the age of 72 in Wales. With an estimated net worth of around $800,000, he left behind a legacy that felt personal, one that stayed close to home, but still reached far enough to be remembered. Nicholas Day, as D.S. Morley. Nicholas Day was born on October 16, 1947, in Gillingham, England. At 44 years old, he played D.S. Morley, the sharp, calculating detective who stepped into Minder during its later years. His presence brought a more controlled, watchful tension, shifting the dynamic of the series as it evolved. His journey into acting wasn't built on quick success, but on years of discipline. After studying at the University of Bristol, Day spent a long stretch in theater, working with the Royal Shakespeare Company and performing in productions like Twelfth Night and The Cherry Orchard. That stage experience gave him precision and control, but it also meant television came slowly, with roles in Poirot and Midsummer Murders that proved his ability without fully pushing him into the spotlight. As the industry changed, Day adapted instead of stepping back. He moved between stage, film, and television, appearing in projects like The World Is Not Enough and later Game of Thrones, where his presence carried authority even in limited screen time. At the same time, he found a new space through narration, using his distinct voice to lead series like Murder Maps, turning what could have been a limitation into a defining strength. That ability to shift kept his career moving steadily forward, even when leading roles were rare. He remained a reliable presence across decades, from The Singing Detective to Luther, building a career that never depended on one defining moment, but on consistency and range. As of 2026, Nicholas Day is 81 years old and continues to work in acting and narration. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his story feels like a slow burn. Never explosive, but always moving. Always finding a way to stay relevant in an industry that rarely stands still. Rula Lenska as Natasha. Rula Lenska was born on September 30, 1947, in Diddington, England. At 33 years old, she played Natasha, a glamorous, confident woman who briefly disrupted Arthur Daly's world in Minder. Her presence added a sharp spark to the storyline, making her character impossible to ignore despite limited screen time. She didn't come from an ordinary background, and that shaped everything about her. Born into a Polish aristocratic family that had lost everything during the war, Lenska grew up between privilege and displacement, carrying a title that meant little in modern Britain. She broke into fame with Rock Follies, and later became widely recognized through bold American TV commercials, where audiences knew her face but kept asking one question: who exactly is she? That strange mix of fame and confusion followed her for years. Her personal life, however, was far less glamorous. Her first marriage to actor Brian Deacon ended in divorce, but it was her second marriage to Dennis Waterman that turned deeply painful. What began as an on-screen romance in Minder became a real relationship that later collapsed under allegations of violence, dragging her private life into public headlines. Years later, when Waterman publicly made controversial remarks about the situation, it reopened old wounds, forcing Lenska to relive a chapter she had tried to leave behind. She also faced public backlash in other ways, including a drink-driving incident that led to a ban and damaged her reputation at a time when she was still actively working. Even so, she continued appearing in long-running shows like Coronation Street, refusing to step away despite the scrutiny and setbacks. As of 2026, Rula Lenska is 78 years old and continues to remain active in television and stage work. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, her life reads like a contradiction. Aristocrat without a kingdom, star without certainty, and a woman who stayed visible even when the spotlight turned harsh. Michael Troughton as D.S. Mellish. Michael Troughton was born on March 2, 1955 in England. At 39 years old, he played D.S. Mellish, a composed and intelligent police officer in Minder. His role added a quieter, more calculated layer to the law enforcement side of the series, balancing the chaos around him. From the start, his path was never going to be simple. As the son of legendary Doctor Who actor Patrick Troughton, expectations followed him into every audition and every role. Instead of rising quickly, he struggled to define his own identity, taking parts in productions like The New Statesman while constantly being compared to his father. That pressure built to a point where he stepped away from acting entirely, choosing to teach physics and later drama, a decision that surprised many but gave him the space he couldn't find in the industry. His personal life moved in a steadier direction. He married Caroline Marston in 1981 and built a family life away from the spotlight, raising 2 children while living in Suffolk. Years later, after returning to acting, he remarried Roxana Mohabati in 2019, marking a new chapter that felt more grounded and less defined by outside expectations. Rather than dramatic illness, his challenge was returning to a career he had once left behind. When he came back, taking roles in projects like Breathless and even appearing in Doctor Who, the same franchise that made his father famous, it felt like a quiet full circle, this time on his own terms. He also moved into voice work and audiobooks, finding a space where experience mattered more than legacy. As of 2026, Michael Troughton is 71 years old and continues working as an actor, writer, and voice artist. With an estimated net worth of around $1.2 million, his story is less about sudden success and more about stepping away, rebuilding, and returning stronger, this time as himself, not just someone's son. Stephen Tompkinson as D.C. Park. Stephen Tompkinson was born on October 15, 1965, in Stockton-on-Tees, County Durham, England. At 26 years old, he appeared as D.C. Park in Minder, a role that came early in his career, but hinted at the screen presence he would later develop. Even in a supporting part, there was something natural about his performance, an ease that suggested he was only just getting started. Growing up, Tompkinson didn't come from privilege, but he did grow up surrounded by personality. His grandfather, whom he often described as a comic genius, left a lasting impression on him and quietly shaped his sense of timing and humor. That influence pushed him toward acting, leading him to train at the Central School of Speech and Drama. From there, his career moved quickly. Roles in Drop the Dead Donkey and Ballykissangel didn't just bring recognition. They showed his ability to shift between comedy and drama with surprising ease, earning him a Best Comedy Actor award and establishing him as a familiar face on British television. Behind the scenes, however, his personal life didn't follow the same smooth trajectory. His marriage to Nikki Taylor ended in divorce after several years together, despite the couple sharing a child. Like many actors juggling fame and family, the balance proved difficult to maintain. His earlier relationship with Celia DeWolf also ended quietly, leaving behind a pattern of relationships that never quite held under the pressure of a demanding career. Over time, Tompkinson became more private, choosing to keep his personal struggles away from public view. Then came a moment that threatened to overshadow everything he had built. In 2021, Tompkinson faced a serious allegation of causing grievous bodily harm. The case dragged on for nearly 2 years, placing him under intense scrutiny and halting his work. Although he was ultimately cleared of all charges in 2023, the experience left a visible mark. It wasn't just about the legal outcome. It was the uncertainty, the public judgment, and the strain that came with waiting for his name to be cleared. That period tested him in ways no role ever had. As of 2026, Stephen Tompkinson is 60 years old and continues to work in television and theater, carefully rebuilding momentum after that difficult chapter. Known for standout roles in Wild at Heart and DCY Banks, he remains a respected figure in British drama. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his story feels less like a straight line to success and more like a series of turns, some celebrated, some painful, but all shaping the actor audiences still recognize today. So after 46 years, the cast of Minder, 1979 to 1994, has changed in ways few could have imagined. Some found lasting success, others faced quiet struggles, and a few are no longer with us. Looking back at their journeys, which transformation surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more then and now stories just like this. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.